You know that feeling when you check your bank account and instead of immediately closing the app in horror, you actually smile? Like a real, genuine smile. It's that moment when you stop calculating whether you can afford that morning coffee or buying groceries today means you'll be eating ramen for the rest of the week. Most people think they need $1 million to reach that point, or at least a six-figure salary. That's what the gurus tell you, right? But they're missing the most important part. There is a much smaller, much more attainable milestone that completely transforms your relationship with money. And once you hit it, everything shifts. That number is exactly $20,000. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time obsessing over financial psychology. Today, I'm going to show you why this specific number is the key to your freedom. Before we dive into why $20,000 is the ultimate game changer, let me ask you a question. When you think about building wealth, what's the first image that pops into your head? Maybe you picture a trust fund kid who's never seen a utility bill. Or perhaps you imagine someone grinding away for 40 years, slowly stacking single dollars like bricks. But here is the cold, hard truth. Wealth building isn't a slow, linear crawl. It's a game of thresholds, invisible barriers that act like walls. Most people spend their entire lives bouncing off the first wall, living paycheck to paycheck, never realizing that the rules of the game change entirely once you cross it. $20,000 is that line in the sand. It is the first major threshold that separates the stuck from the truly successful. Think about it this way. If you've ever tried to push a massive boulder up a steep hill, you know that the first few inches are the hardest. You're straining, you're sweating, your muscles are screaming, and you're making almost zero progress. You start to question if it's even possible to move the thing. But then you build a little momentum. The boulder starts to turn, and eventually, finally, you reach the crest of that hill. Once you hit the top, the boulder starts rolling down the other side almost effortlessly. $20,000 is that crest. Everything before this point feels like you're fighting gravity with every single cent you save. But everything after this point, that's when gravity starts working in your favor. And the reason for this isn't just math. The real magic is happening inside your brain. When you don't have any money saved, your brain operates in what psychologists call survival mode. It's a primal state where every single financial decision is filtered through fear and scarcity. In this mode, you aren't making choices, you're just reacting. You take the first job offer that comes along, even if it's a dead end, because you literally can't afford to be picky. You stay in toxic work environments or bad living situations because leaving feels like a life-threatening risk. You say yes to things you hate just to keep the lights on. This isn't about being responsible, it's about being trapped. When you're in survival mode, your brain cannot, I repeat, cannot think about growth or opportunity. It's like trying to plan a dream vacation while your house is actively on fire. But something remarkable happens the moment you cross that $20,000 threshold. Suddenly, for the first time in your life, your brain has the space to breathe. Instead of the constant, frantic question of, how do I survive until Friday, you find yourself asking, how can I actually grow this money? Research from Vanguard shows that even just $2,000 in emergency savings boosts your financial well-being by 21%. That's a massive shift for such a small amount. But when you push that buffer to cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most people is that $20,000 mark, the psychological impact is profound. You've moved out of wealth preservation and into wealth creation. You've traded your fear for a strategy. And that changes everything. Now, let's look at the math, because this is where it gets really exciting. Let's say you're saving $1,000 every single month and earning a steady 8% return on your investments. Getting to that first $20,000 is going to take you about 19 months. That's a year and a half of pure discipline, sacrifice, and saying no to instant gratification. It's the hardest part, and honestly, it's where most people quit. But here's the part that will blow your mind. Your second $20,000 doesn't take another 19 months. It only takes 17. Why? Because now you've got that first $20,000 working right alongside you, generating its own returns. You're doing the exact same work, but you've just shaved 2 full months off your timeline. That is the power of compound interest finally kicking in. By the time you're aiming for your third $20,000, the timeline shrinks even more. Your money is starting to do the heavy lifting while you just keep putting in the same steady effort. And as the numbers grow, the acceleration becomes almost comical. Once you hit a $400,000 portfolio, your investments can generate $20,000 in just 5 months. Think about that. The same amount of money that took you nearly 2 years to save at the beginning is now happening automatically while you sleep. That first milestone feels like an impossible mountain, but every milestone after that gets progressively easier. You don't need a secret, you just need scale. You might think that wealthy people have access to some secret investment world that regular folks can't touch, exclusive hedge funds or private deals that only unlock for the elite. And while there's a tiny bit of truth to that at the very top, it's not what's driving this $20,000 phenomenon. The real secret is actually much simpler and honestly much more encouraging. It's just basic mathematics finally working in your favor. If you invest $1,000 and it grows 10%, you made $100. That's nice, but it's not changing your life. But apply that same 10% to $20,000 and suddenly you've made $2,000 in profit. Same time frame, same risk, but the result actually matters to your bottom line. This is exactly the reason why $20,000 feels like the ultimate turning point. Until you hit that number, your investment returns feel almost invisible. A 10% return on $2,000 is only $200. It's okay, but it won't pay the rent. But that same return on $20,000 is $2,000. Now we're talking about real money. That's $1,600 flowing into your account annually without you lifting a finger. That is money you didn't have to trade your time for. It appeared because your existing money was working as your employee. You don't need a sophisticated strategy. You can use the same index funds as everyone else. The only difference is the scale of your capital. And scale is what transforms small wins into real freedom. But there's a part of this story that most people completely miss, and it might be the most important point of this whole video. When you save $20,000, you have accomplished something far more valuable than just stacking cash. You have fundamentally rewired your brain. You have built the most important financial habit you will ever own. Think about what it actually takes to save that much starting from zero. Unless you're a high roller, this required serious, sustained discipline. You had to track your dollars, you had to say no to things you wanted, and you had to resist the urge to blow your savings on every shiny new object. You proved that you can control your money instead of letting your money control you. That, my friends, is a superpower. By reaching this milestone, you became the type of person who can delay gratification. That isn't just a finance tip, it's a life-altering skill. This identity shift changes every decision you make. Before the $20,000 mark, buying a $4 coffee might have caused a mental debate about whether you could afford it. But after, you don't sweat the small stuff because you know your priorities are locked in. You've proven you can handle the big sacrifices, and that leads to a huge psychological shift. You start seeing opportunities where you used to only see threats. When you're broke, a car repair or a broken laptop is a disaster that derails your entire year. But once you have that $20,000 in the bank, those disasters turn into mere inconveniences. When you have $20,000 in the bank, the world looks different. Your car needs a new transmission? Annoying, sure, but it's not a catastrophe. Your laptop dies? It's just an excuse to upgrade to a better tool. Even when the rent goes up, you don't panic. You use that energy to look for a better place or negotiate your salary. But it gets even better. You start noticing opportunities that were always there, but you were too stressed to see them. Maybe a friend is starting a business and needs an investor. Before, you just wish them luck. Now you can actually run the numbers and consider putting in $5,000. Or a killer real estate deal pops up. You're no longer just a spectator. You're a player in the game. This is exactly what wealthy people mean when they say money goes to money. It isn't some cosmic conspiracy where the universe rewards the rich. It's simply that having cash gives you options, and options create more opportunities to make even more cash. Around the $20,000 mark, something else happens. You stop obsessing over small expenses and start focusing on the big ones. When you're broke, you spend all your mental energy on whether to buy the name brand cereal or the generic one. You agonize over $3. That mental fatigue is real, and it's exhausting. But with a solid foundation, you realize those micro decisions don't move the needle. You stop worrying about the organic bananas and start worrying about your strategy. What really matters are the big levers: where you live, what you drive, how much you save, and where you invest. These 4 choices can swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars. Instead of exhausting yourself over grocery coupons, you focus on optimizing your housing, maximizing your income, and ensuring your investment strategy is rock solid. This shift is incredibly liberating. It frees up your mental bandwidth for the decisions that actually move you towards your goals. You move from being a saver, someone who just keeps money, to being an allocator, someone who positions their money for maximum growth. You're no longer playing defense, you're finally playing offense, and that's how you win. Let's talk about your career, because this milestone changes your relationship with work in a way you wouldn't expect. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're essentially a prisoner of your current job. Even if your boss is a nightmare, your coworkers are toxic, or the work is soul-crushing, you can't just leave. You need that next check to survive, and that puts you in a dangerously weak position. You can't ask for a raise because you're terrified of being fired. You can't push back on unreasonable demands because you have zero leverage. You are stuck. And unfortunately, everyone in the office can smell that desperation. It keeps you small, it keeps you quiet, and it keeps you underpaid. But $20,000 changes the power dynamic instantly. Suddenly, you have what I call walking away money. You could quit tomorrow and survive for months while you look for something better. Now, I'm not saying you should be reckless or burn bridges, but just knowing you can leave changes your posture. You negotiate from a position of strength. You ask for the raise you deserve because the worst they can say is no, and you'll be fine either way. You start exploring new opportunities because you can afford to take a calculated risk. This confidence doesn't just feel good, it makes you more assertive and more valuable. You're no longer a hostage to your desk, you're a professional with options. And here's the crazy thing: when you show up to work with that kind of quiet confidence, people notice. You start getting better assignments, more recognition, and ironically, more money. It's like a secret superpower. But this is also where most people blow it. They hit that $20,000 mark, feel that surge of confidence, and then immediately go out and buy something stupid to celebrate. They decide they deserve a new car or an expensive vacation because they've been so disciplined. Don't fall for it. That $20,000 isn't a reward for good behavior. It's the foundation of your future. It is the seed that grows into generational wealth, but only if you are patient enough to let it stay in the ground and compound. That $20,000 is a seed. If you dig it up now, you'll never see the tree. The average person spends more money on their car over a lifetime than it would take to achieve total financial independence. Think about that for a second. Between the monthly payments, the insurance, the maintenance, and the gas, most people are bleeding $600 to $800 every single month. Over 40 years, that is over $400,000 just to get from point A to point B. Meanwhile, those same people complain that they can't afford to save for retirement. It's like spending a fortune on a gym membership you never use while saying you can't afford healthy food. It's a total misalignment to priorities that keeps you broke. The second you drive a brand new car off the lot, it loses 20% of its value. You aren't just spending money, you are actively destroying your wealth. Compare that to investing that same money into a diversified portfolio. Instead of watching your hard-earned cash evaporate into new car smell, you're watching it multiply. Having 20,000 saved changes how you see every major purchase. Instead of asking, can I afford the monthly payment, you ask, what is this costing me in future freedom? That $30,000 car isn't just 30 grand, it's $200,000 of future wealth that you just set on fire. Suddenly, driving a reliable used car doesn't feel like a sacrifice, it feels like a strategic move. This mindset shift eventually extends to every part of your life, your housing, your vacations, your hobbies. Everything gets filtered through the lens of opportunity cost, not in a way that sucks the joy out of life, but in a way that makes you intentional. You realize you don't actually want half the stuff you thought you did. That bigger apartment? It's nice, but is it worth 5 more years of working a job you don't love? This isn't about being a miser. It's about choosing what you really want over what you want right now. $20,000 is the difference between reacting to the world and designing your own place in it. It's the shift from surviving to thriving. Start building that foundation today. Whether you're at 0 or already halfway there, keep pushing until you hit that $20,000 mark. Your future self is counting on the decisions you make in this very moment. Trust me, they will thank you for the discipline you show today. If this video helped you see your finances through a different lens, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of money. I've left some resources in the description to help you track your progress to your first 20,000. Thanks for watching, stay disciplined, and I will see you in the next one.